Well, hello to everyone who is just now jumping on. Sorry, we're starting a little bit late. Some technical difficulties yet again. Awesome. Well, I am here. This is Tori. I'm here with MyCounselor.Online with one of our licensed therapists, Josh Spurlock. So Josh, thanks for coming in today.
Man, it's good. I know we've been working, trying to overcome the technological challenges and like the rest of the world, trying to figure out how do we navigate through COVID-19? How do we figure out how to connect with folks and help them as they're navigating the challenges that this presents? And so it's requiring really a lot of learning and stretching from everyone. And we're definitely in that same boat and trying to figure out like how do we make Zoom work? How do we make Facebook Live work? How do we make the two talk? So I appreciate everybody's patience with us as we're navigating those challenges. I'm super excited about our topic today.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's so good to be able to interact and engage with everybody, even as we're all at home. It's really neat to be able to still communicate, still talk, still serve y'all and answer questions here today with Josh. So we're just going to jump in. If you think of a question as you're watching this live stream, please comment and we will answer your questions. But we're just going to sit on here for a while and chat with you guys. So Josh, you ready to get going?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, we already have one question. And this question is, how can my spouse and I improve communication during quarantine? I want to even know an answer to this, as I am in the house with my spouse, during this time. And really that's the main person that I'm around. So how do you, improve communication during this?
Yeah, so communication is a normal struggle for couples to have, right? And it's exacerbated when we're in quarantine because many of the points of friction or conflict that maybe we could dodge or work our way around and not have to take head on are just in our face continuously when we're around our spouse as much as we are and we don't have the other avenues to avoid dealing with those things. Plus, we're dealing with all sorts of transition. If we've got kids, we're going to be dealing with them being at home and trying to figure out what that looks like, working from home, navigating potential financial stressors that are part of the situation. And so there's all of these things that are just creating tension and increasing the need for communication in order to navigate through them. And so if we had some struggles in communication before all of this, those are just magnified in a way that causes breakdown for us. So the first thing that I would say is we have to be willing to recognize that we have a problem, that this is not working so well, that the cycle that we get caught in leads instead of to productive dialogue that builds us up and helps us find meaningful solutions to the challenges that we're facing, that it's digressing into attack, it's digressing into pot shots, it's digressing into kind of hurtfulness, destructiveness, instead of something productive. And so if we can externalize that a little bit, that is, if instead of blaming that on each other and being like, well, if you would just stop, or I wouldn't if you didn't, and kind of the back and forth, if we can step back and go, dude, this is not working for us. This approach, we keep going around and around these same things. We're not getting any further. I don't feel good when we come out of our conversations. I don't like the way I show up when we get to that place in our conflict. We've got to find another way to do this because you matter to me. I care about you. I don't want to get to this place where I say and do things that are destructive and hurtful. And I don't want to be in the place where I feel like I'm under attack. And to recognize that just shutting you out and closing you out doesn't help us either. It causes more distance and disconnect. When we can step back from the problem and talk about the problem, that's what I mean by externalize, that instead of us being so submerged in it that we're just like controlled by the cycle, are able to step back from the cycle and talk about what's not working for us, it really is the first step and begins a pathway to begin experimenting with different approaches to changing that cycle. So it's a good place to start. There's a lot of different directions you might go from there, but if you can have that conversation, you're on your way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That is a great question right now that I'm sure many watching are kind of wrestling with. So, thank you so much for your question. And if you're just now jumping on, welcome. This is My Counselor Online. I'm Tori, and I'm here with one of our licensed therapists, Josh Spurlock, answering questions on marriage in quarantine here on My Counselor Live. So, we're really happy you're here. And we have another question that came in. So this person asks, with the stress from quarantine, I'm becoming short-tempered and easily frustrated, which is
Mhm.
impacting my marriage. How can I overcome this?
Yeah, great. I just so appreciate the question, right? And the heart behind the question. Right? The way God's designed marriage is really intended to reflect the kind of relationship that he wants to have with all people. And an inherent part of that is that recognizing the value of our spouse, that God values us, created us in his image, that we're precious to him. And he desires within our marriage that that's how we would relate to each other, that we would recognize our spouse's value and treat them in a way that respects that value. And I just hear that heart within the question, right? That says, I recognize that there are ways in which I'm showing up that does not reflect my spouse's value, that I'm talking to them, I'm acting to them in ways that are inconsistent with my love for them, inconsistent with how God sees them, and is not who I want to be, isn't how I want to show up and treat my spouse. Help me figure out how to have things be different. And I just believe that that heart really honors God and puts us, it's a humility that really sets us up to be able to grow. Um, and so I appreciate the heart that the question comes from. Let's talk a little bit about just practically the stress management piece, right? That anxiety is a normal function of our body. It's not a sign of the curse. It's part of God's design for us, and it serves a valuable purpose in helping to modulate emotion. We call it inhibitory emotion, and so it allows us to kind of shut down and block emotion that, for whatever reason, has been scary or damaging in the past and being expressed. But it creates a lot of discomfort for us. It puts us on edge and angst. And if we're going to navigate through the anxiety without it having us lash out at our spouse or engage in ways that are destructive, we really have to understand what it's about, what's underneath the anxiety, right? What's the tension about, which requires mindfulness, right? We have to be able to sit with ourselves and invite the Holy Spirit into the space with us and reflect on what's going on in my heart. What's this anxiety about? We might find that it's about fear, and that there's things that are out of control in our life. We don't know what's going to happen, whether that be with work or with our health. Maybe it's with relational stresses, and we don't know what's happening in our relationship. And maybe there's fear underneath there that we are uncomfortable with engaging. And so the anxiety actually becomes a mechanism by which our brain and our body help to kind of block that fear out and distract us from it, if you will. That the anxiety becomes a way that our brain distracts us from getting overwhelmed with something that we don't know what to do with. But if we can sit with it and identify that that's what's underneath it, we can begin to share and connect around that with the important people in our life, maybe our spouse, maybe others that are close to us, in a way that allows us to work through that fear. And when we work through that fear, it relieves the anxiety that fear is driving, which helps us come down into a state of piece that enables us to navigate our relational challenges, our relationship, as well as whatever's generating the fear in the first place. Maybe grief. Sadness is another piece that can drive anxiety, right? That we've experienced loss. Maybe you've experienced some loss during this season of your life. Maybe that's employment, maybe that's work, maybe that's just loss of your routine in your life, loss of connection with the people who are significant in your life. For a lot of folks, this whole uh, crisis and pandemic has changed not only the short-term outlook for their life, but many of the things in their life are never going to go back to the way they were before. And that change and that transition creates grief. If we're not able to be mindful of that and connect with that and care for our heart and those parts of us that are grieving, that creates anxiety. That drives anxiety. And so the key takeaway as we're thinking about the stressors and the anxiety that are coming is to recognize that anxiety is a symptom, not the root issue. That we're not looking to just kind of magically make the anxiety go away. So there's not really a good way to do that. There's things that we can do to help de-escalate our system, like deep breathing and meditation. One of our counselors on the team, Ali Hittinger, put out a article and a video here recently that really helps talk through how to engage guided meditation in a way that can help de-escalate your body and your system. But it's really about understanding that the anxiety that we're feeling is driven by something else. And if we make the space to understand what's underneath our anxiety, we can start dealing with the root issue in a way that enables us to relieve the anxiety and care for our heart.
Right, right. And I mean, it goes back to the first question, on how to communicate with your spouse, having that mindfulness, finding those roots, finding, the problem spots and communicating with your spouse about what you're feeling, what you're going through, just kind of letting them into that space inside of you.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
totally.
great question.
Otherwise, it gets projected onto our spouse, right? We're feeling
Yeah,
stressed, we're feeling angst about this or that, or we're feeling afraid, or we're grieving. And if we're aware of is the anxiety and the tension, it's easy for us to attribute that to our spouse or to our kids or to kind of whatever it is that's in our environment. Our
absolutely.
brain likes to make sense of what it is they're experiencing. And so if I've got all of this tension underneath the surface, and then there's this trigger of some sort, whether it's my spouse saying or doing something that's obnoxious to me, or my kids engaging in some way that's frustrating, then the intensity of that tension gets vented in the
Mm.
direction of that trigger, even though it's not really about that. We call that kind of displacement or projection of that getting put onto a person or a circumstance that it's really not about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even going off of that, leading into our next question, regarding projecting those emotions, someone asked, how would you advise couples having to parent together now? There
Mhm.
is more conflict than ever before because one spouse was usually carrying more of the parenting role while the other was outside of the home working.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a great question just to go into.
Yeah, this is actually a occurrence that we experience regularly with veterans. And so when we're working with the military and spouses are deployed, and the spouse that is home with the kids has to figure out kind of how do I uh, parent and how do I navigate family life with the absence of my spouse. And so they figure out a system of life and a system for navigating just the normal day-to-day parenting issues. And then when the spouse returns from deployment, they mess up that system, right?
Mm,
It goes from a system that's established and we figured out how to function, and now that is getting changed or messed up, and it's like, now what do we do? And so it's a dynamic that we're familiar with and that happens a lot and is a common thing for couples and families to have to navigate. We're just experiencing it on a lot larger scale because suddenly all these little systems, arrangements where we had a strategy for navigating things are getting messed up in a variety of different ways. So you've got a lot of times they're messed up because maybe we have kids home all day, whereas before they were going to school or they were going to different kind of sports programs, or we just had a routine that was going on, and so it's messed up in that regard. And then it's messed up that we have the other parent around who maybe wasn't present for a lot of those conflicts and defaulted to the other parent in terms of how to navigate those situations. And the parenting styles and dynamics are often different. And that's not a bad thing. Like sometimes we can think that that's a problem, and we think about being on the same page as being meaning sameness. And it's not actually what we're after, that God gave kids two different parents on purpose because they each bring something different to the family and to the parenting of the child, and it's the combination of those two things that really the child needs in order to grow to be healthy. So it's not, do we do it my wife's way, or do we do it my way, or do we do it my husband's way, or do it my way? It's really about figuring out how do we bring those things together in order to parent as a team in a way that allows our differences to complement each other and for that environment to really help our kids thrive. And communication is key in that because we're going to be in different places and we're going to have very different ideas about how to handle the same situation. And so, practical uh, suggestion and how to get started in those conversations would be consider defaulting to the parent who would normally have handled those situations to begin with. Now, it's not to say that that's where we stay, but we're not going to get on the same page about how to handle those things differently overnight, right? We've been doing things differently for a long time, and we probably have very good reasons for why we think it should be done the way we think it should be done. And we're not going to reconcile those differences in one setting, in one conversation. So we have to be patient with ourselves. We have to be patient with our spouse. We have to create space for that dialogue to happen in order for us to arrive at a new way of navigating the situation. In the short term, because we still have to parent while we're trying to figure all that out, right? In the short term, I would suggest that maybe consider defaulting to and allowing the strategy that the parent who normally would have navigated those situations would take. There's two reasons why I would suggest that. One, it's what's most familiar to the kids. Right? The kids are already used to mom or dad handling that situation the way mom or dad handles that situation. And so it's helping maintain some consistency in the structure and routine for the kiddos, which is a good thing for them amongst everything else that's different around them, right?
Yeah.
And the second piece is it respects your spouse, right? And says, listen, you normally have handled this and you've done this, and I've kind of defaulted to that, and maybe I want to be more involved now, and feel a desire to do that. But I want to respect what you've got going while we have the discussion about how it might look different going forward. And that really allows your spouse to feel respected. Because if you just come in and be like, well, the way you're doing it's dumb, we should do it my way, that's going to create some problems.
Yeah.
That's not really respectful of your spouse. It's not honoring to them. And it doesn't value what it is they bring or the work that they've done, and definitely doesn't lend itself towards an open dialogue around these things. So you just can't approach it like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great answer, great practical advice in this season where routine is kind of all crazy and a little bit different than, what we're used to and what we're used to in our marriage and parenting and all of it. So that's really great. Guys, if you're just jumping on, we are doing a Q&A here at MyCounselor.Online with Josh Spurlock, just talking through marriage in quarantine. So if you have a question, feel free to go ahead and comment that. And we're going to be on just answering your questions. So on to the next one. Someone asked, what practical verbiage should I use, like counselors use, when I am defensive to calm or guide our spouses to focus so we can come to a solution? So that clashing viewpoints are not, disconnected or unheard. So, yeah, I mean, what would be a good verbiage to use in kind of clashing situations with a spouse?
Yeah, we're looking for the magic words, right?
Right.
Therapists that seem to have the magic words and they can navigate the heated or complex situations and know just what to say in a way that de-escalates the situation.
Mhm.
And I would love to give you those magic words, but they really don't exist. There really isn't some magic verbiage that can de-escalate a situation. But there are some pointers that I can give you that will be really helpful to you. First of all, recognize that in conflict, we tend to match and escalate the other person. So if you're talking at this level, then I talk at this level, and then you talk at this level, and then we're up here, and that we tend to match and escalate, right?
True.
So that's how one of the ways in which we get escalated, but it's also one of the ways we can de-escalate in a situation. If I slow down in what it is that I'm saying, and I bring the volume down, and I slow the pace down, and we engage dialogue like this, that also has a way of affecting our interaction. So my voice and my body posture, and if I'm engaging aggressively, and that's going to escalate. If I kind of get smaller in my frame and I'm less threatening, and instead of trying to like force my way in, I'm listening. That those pieces in and of themselves help to have someone who's escalated match that as well. It's just the way our bodies mirror each other and the mirror neurons and the way our body's made up that can work against us in terms of us continuing escalating up. But if we can be consciously aware of it, we can bring it down also, which is also, this works with all human beings, right? And so it works with our kids also, right? If our kids are coming and their hair is on fire, if we match them kind of where they're at, it just escalates with them as well. But if we can stay cool and stable and kind of step back instead of being emotionally reactive, then we can engage intentionally instead of reactively. And that really changes the dynamic of what's going on. But a key piece to that is we have to be able to monitor what's going on inside of us. Because if we're reacting and we're reactive, then we don't have that stability in order to be able to engage intentionally in a way that reduces things.
Right, right. So
There's,
how do we find that stillness, in the
yeah,
middle of a big fight?
yeah, good question. Good question. So, one is you just got to, it's back to mindfulness. You hear us talk and counselors talk about mindfulness quite a bit. And really, what mindfulness is about is just being connected with ourselves, kind of recognizing the fullness of how God made us, the mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, that we're integrated beings, and that different aspects of our experience all together reflect the Imago Dei and our information for us in navigating life. And so mindfulness is just making space to be reflective on my experience. Part of that mindfulness is recognizing my physiological experience. I call it limbic response within our body. The emotional seat of our, or the seat of our emotions is in our limbic system, and it shows up in our body. And when we can be aware of the tension that's building in my body, it can be a cue to me to step back and slow down. Like I know when I'm engaging Cassie and I'm starting to get my buttons pushed, I can feel the tension in my body. I do this because it happens down my neck and across my shoulders. Like my shoulders rise up because of that tension. And I feel it down my jaw, and I feel the tension in my jaw, and I feel it in my chest, and then this kind of tightness in my core. And those physiological symptoms, those physiological indicators tell me I'm getting ramped up. And if I listen to that, if I'm mindful, if I'm attuned to my body and I can notice what's happening there, I can use that information to help me make some smart decisions about what to do next. And I can go, I'm not in a good place to have this conversation. Like I am not, I can feel my body reacting. And I know when I start getting escalated, I say and do things that are not me at my best. And so I have to make the decision to step back from the dialogue. I have to go, I used to, when we lived in Missouri, we had a long 1/4-mile driveway down to our mailbox, and I would go check the mail, right? I'd step back, I'm gonna go check the mail. Even if I'd already gotten the mail earlier in the day, right? So I'd walk down to the mailbox because I needed to give myself the space to breathe. I needed to give myself the space to go, Jesus, help me. Help me get a hold of myself. Help me show up the way that you want me to show up, that I can reflect you in the way I navigate this. Holy Spirit, help me see my own heart and know kind of what's going on inside of me so that I'm not reactive in ways that are destructive. And it just gave myself the space that I need to get in a better place. So that mindfulness allows me to be aware of when I'm being reactive so I can make the decision to give myself more space to where I can talk through, what am I really upset about here? Why is this bothering me so much? Like, what's underneath it? Why is this really such a big deal to me? And I can engage my frontal cortex into that mix of that limbic response and emotional reactivity in a way that helps me begin to have insight into what's happening for me. It really positions me to be able to circle back and have a conversation that's much more productive. And it also gives my spouse an opportunity to kind of breathe also. And if I do that early in the process, because I'm paying attention to what's happening to me, then I can do it before I become destructive and say and do things that I regret and that I have to come back and clean up, which is so respectful of my spouse and is so respectful of my creator and how he wants me to treat her. And so it's just super, super valuable.
Right.
Well, that's a good start in that. A book, we're at home, maybe we got some time. If you want to flip off Netflix and listen to an audiobook or read a book, there's a book called Crucial Conversations that I love. I recommend to clients all the time. I listen to it like once a year. It's kind of on my annual re-listen to book, which is saying a lot. I read a lot of books, and then there's not many of them that are on my listen to every year list, and that's one that is. I love the audio version of it, the second edition. The first edition, wasn't a big fan of the narrator, but I really like the second edition audio version of it. And I'll recommend the couples to listen to it together. It's a great couples exercise that you can do. Like you can put it on, your speaker and lay in bed together or sit in the room and just listen to the chapters together, which enables you to hit the pause button on the Audible app and have some discussion with each other about what each of you is thinking and feeling as you're listening to the different segments of it. So it's a business book, right? And so it's not like written for marriage and written for couples, but it's so good and really, really can help you navigate what they call crucial conversations. That is, those emotionally charged conversations much better than we tend to on our own.
Yeah, really, really good advice. Great insight into that question, Josh. Thank you. Um, that was awesome. I feel like I am getting so much wisdom from this whole conversation because I'm in the same spot, as so many of the other couples in the world right now. So, really good advice. We got another question from this person who says, my spouse and I used to have weekly date nights where we went out and had intentional time to connect away from the kids. How can we create that time to connect now when we can't leave the house? Which is such a difficult spot to be in.
Totally.
Josh, what insight do you have for this person with this question?
Yeah, first of all, I want to praise and affirm you for being someone who intentionally dates your spouse. Like that was a game changer for Cassie and I. When we started making regular date nights a part of our week, it really did change the connection in our relationship. That it was in a season in life where we were fostering, and we had foster kiddos at our home, and we had biological kiddos, and it was early in practice days for me, and so there was so much and that was requiring of me that we were just stretched thin. We were stressed out, and we were feeling the grind of that disconnection. And prioritizing a date night into our week was just absolute game changer. We both looked forward to that time. It allowed space where we could just go and yeah, just unpack our day, unpack our week, stare into each other's eyes, drool on ourselves some. It was that quality time that there's no substitute for in relationship. I use the word picture sometimes that quality time in marriage is like water to a tomato plant. If you've ever grown tomato plants, you know that they require a lot of water, and that you can have all other conditions perfect. Right? You can start with a good starter plant. You can fertilize the ground, till it up. You can build a nice little fence around it to keep, the critters from nibbling at it. You can spray for bugs. You can have great sun exposure. Like everything can be perfect. If you don't water it, it's not going to grow. Like it's just you can't. There is no substitute for it. And you can't like dump 100 gallons of water on it at the beginning of the season and then not water it the rest of the year. Like the ground can only soak up so much at one time. And we try to do that sometimes in relationship. And folks will say, yeah, we don't see very much, but then we take these trips together and we go 2 weeks down to Cabo, or we kind of go and we just have all this great time. It's wonderful and let's connect. And we're just, and then we don't see each other at all for the next 3 months, as we're just passing in the night. Doesn't work. The ground can only soak up so much at a time. Everything else beads up and runs off. Those things are good and valuable, but they don't replace regular watering in a relationship, right? Or the super wet water myth. Sometimes I'll hear couples say, or it's usually husbands, and they'll say, yeah, we don't have very much time together, but we just make it really count when we do. It's just it's not quantity, it's about quality. And so we don't have a whole lot of time, but we just make it really good the time that we have. Super wet water myth. There is no such thing as super wet water. And then like you can't like apply super wet water to a tomato plant this week and you don't need to water it again for 2 weeks because you used super wet water when you watered it. It doesn't work like that. Like there's no substitute for quantity. Now you need regular steady watering. The structure that I recommend to folks with that, is that you need 15 to 20 minutes a day at a minimum, where it's just undivided attention, you and your spouse, no devices, no kids, no Netflix, it's just you and her, or you and him, and of talking, processing, connecting around what's going on in you. So that's a minimum, 15, 20 minutes a day, right? That space. Then you need a few hours a week, right? So this is where the date night comes in, right? That a few hours a week we're block off and we have each other's undivided attention. You can go catch a movie, you can go do something. I don't really love movies in that, from the vantage point of we're sitting next to each other and staring up at a screen, and they're not as interactive. So preferably having a few hours on a date where we have each other's undivided attention or just engaging each other. And then on a quarterly basis, at least, it's really helpful to have an overnight kind of getaway. At least once every 12 weeks, or a few times a year, where we spend a whole day or two. We take a weekend and we sleep in, we lounge, we visit, we hang, we go do that, right? And remember that we like each other, right? Heard a pastor put it once, loved it. I think it was John Lendl that I heard say this, that you keep them like you caught them. Right? I've always held on to that. I'm like, that's good. That's good. And we do this when we're dating, early in a relationship. We dedicate that quality time to each other. And then we get married and we get busy with life and it goes away. And so does the connection between us. So all of that to affirm, yes, this is important. We need this. Back to the question of, so how do we accomplish that in quarantine?
Right. Yeah.
So we got to get creative. When we got kiddos at home, which is typically where this conversation is coming from, right? That if you don't have kiddos at home and it's just the two of you, then put down the phone and hang out. But I'm assuming that the question is coming from the vantage point of, we got kiddos at home, we're doing maybe homeschooling now, and we're trying to figure out, how do we make this work?
Yeah.
Well, one thing that you can try is being really intentional with play alone time with your kids. That's what we call it in our house, play alone time. And that's where you set your kiddos up in separate corners of the house, maybe in separate rooms, sometimes just separate corners of the same room, and engage them with an activity that is going to keep them occupied for an hour or two. Say a movie, and then say you got an iPad or a portable DVD player or something like that, and you can put in a movie and give them a bag of snacks of some sort, put headphones on them, and they're sitting over in their separate places, so they don't touch each other and they don't look at each other and they don't breathe each other's air and they don't, all the things, right? So that they can be kind of occupied for a little block of time. And then you go to another room and you don't get on your phone and you don't watch Netflix and you don't kind of engage some sort of place that takes your mind elsewhere than being with your spouse. You adjust chairs and you just kind of sit there in each other's presence. Even if we don't talk, actually, just kind of being in each other's presence is super valuable. Maybe we snuggle, right? Oxytocin is super helpful in helping us feel connected. And when we hold each other for 3 minutes or more, our body starts to produce oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone, and we start to feel more emotionally connected, even if we don't say a word to each other, just the way God made our bodies. And that, or maybe we play cards or a board game, or we do something that's interactive. Maybe we listen to a chapter of Crucial Conversations together and have a discussion. That we carve out that block of time just to be in each other's presence, have that undivided attention as much as possible, and do some interaction there. So that's one possibility, that space. Another possibility might be carving out and bathing together, right? That you're hopefully, I know some of us, like, showering has become low priority. Like, we're not going out, and we're not going anywhere, we're not doing our hair, so maybe it's not happening as regularly as it once did. But it's a period of time kind of where we're used to kind of carving out and having alone time in order to bathe. Hopefully your kids aren't intruding on that too much. But you can combine that and make it some couple time. You guys can shower together. You guys can, if you got a tub that'll accommodate, you can take a bath together and just kind of lock the door. Again, either kids are in bed or it's earlier in the morning and they're, munching on Cheerios. And you're just taking some time having that skin to skin contact, closeness. That helps again with the oxytocin bonding and has the kind of that intimate nature to it where we're just in each other's space and we're close and we're enjoying the closeness of that. So it's another way that you can sneak that in. Sometimes folks are like, we don't have space to put kids every which way. I would space them around in the house, do the play alone time, and go sit in your car in the driveway, right? Don't have it running in the garage with the door shut. That's a bad thing. But sitting, in the driveway in the car together, so you have the sense of privacy and the sense of aloneness, just the two of you, but you're close enough that if there's an emergency of some sort, you can address that or get in on it. If your kids are a little bit older, going for a walk, hold hands, go for a walk the neighborhood, walk the local park, and do a date in that way. Again, you're still close enough to home that you can be accessible to the kiddos if they need you, and you're able to have some just quality alone time with your spouse. You can do double dates like that too. I've seen some couples doing dinner dates and game night dates of sorts online. And so they're bringing in via Zoom or Hangouts or some sort of app, another couple, and they're hanging out and enjoying some hangout time in a double date kind of way, commiserating around all the stressors. There's a few ideas just throw out there as to things that you might try.
Yeah, I love that. I love getting creative. And what a great time to do that right now in this season where you're having to get outside, maybe even your comfort zone, and do different things together. So that's great.
Yeah. Was that necessity is the mother of invention?
Right.
Sometimes when we get into these situations, they force us out of our routine. They force us out of our normal structure, which can be a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. It's good. It's awesome. So let's jump into the next question. My husband and I both believe that the husband should be the leader of the home in a Christ-like, loving, and serving way. And while we both agree that, we want to work as a team that definitely accounts for my ideas and encouragement.
Totally.
This dynamic hasn't been present in our marriage. Now that my husband is home, we are trying to shift the dynamic to what we believe is more biblical, since typically I've been more controlling and he's been passive. Some days it's not gone well, and then other days it has. Sometimes it just seems to increase the conflict. We would love your thoughts on shifting this so I'm not micromanaging him or the family.
Yeah, man, again, I just so appreciate the heart and that desire to be honoring to each other, to be honoring to God, wanting to grow and mature, and really doing what I would hope all of us would do during this time. And that is allowing the struggle to be a source of growth for us, to be a catalyst to growth. That God desires to use the struggles of our life to bring about maturity in our life. And there's some significant struggle that's a part of this, which means there's some significant opportunity for growth and maturity through this process. Yeah, so I hear that. I hear that sounds like the heart that this question's coming from. That we're in the midst of this, it's creating some difficulty and struggle, but we also see an opportunity in this for some growth in our relationship. So affirm that, appreciate that, and have a lot of respect for that. So thinking through how do we navigate that between the two of us. There's different thoughts, obviously, within Christendom about how to interpret all the different passages around headship and spiritual leadership within the family and whatnot. And I'm certainly not going to kind of like resolve that debate within the church in our time here today. But I'll share a little bit about just some thoughts that I have found to be really helpful with couples that I work with, and I'll offer them to you and see if any of them are useful to you. The first thing that I would throw out there is we want to have a real good understanding of what a leadership means and what spiritual leadership means. And that what does it mean to love our wives like Christ loves the church? And what does that dynamic look like? And there's a pat answer, that's maybe sounds cliche, but it's maybe cliche because it's true, and it's Jesus is really our model for what that looks like. And if we look at Christ and his example within the scriptures, right, we never see Christ dragging anybody anywhere. We never see him twisting anybody's arm or trying to browbeat someone into doing things the way that he thinks that they should be done. Like, that's not the way Jesus led. That's not the way that he showed people the way. That leading is not dragging. And it's never going to work for you to try to drag your wife into a submission of what it is you think should happen. That's a distortion of God's design and really going to create division and disconnection within relationship. And so a foundational kind of thought is, okay, so what does it mean to lead? And leadership's really about taking responsibility, right? About taking ownership of whatever it is that we're talking about, that we're leading in, and saying that how I engage this shows the way. How I engage this is modeling for whomever it is that I'm leading. Whether it's you're the leader of an organization or you're thinking about leading within your home, that it's really about, do I engage whatever this is in such a way that reflects how God would have us engage it? So my understanding of it. And does it invite the other or others to follow, right? Whether or not people follow, whether it's in an organization, whether it's a church, whether it's in a family, is really between them and Jesus. It's not your job to make people follow, and you don't have the power to do that. There is a Holy Spirit, and you're not him. That there's a need to entrust the Holy Spirit to do the work in another person's heart for them to engage following, right? And so there's a need to allow and trust God to bring that work about in the heart of your spouse in navigating that. And you do what it is that the Lord is directing you to do. If we're taking our orders from Christ, that means we have to be attuned to him, right? And Christ is never going to lead us in the direction of devaluing our spouse, being derogatory or running down, or kind of beating over the head, or being manipulative, or guilt tripping. That's not who he is. That's not how he operates, and that's not how he's going to direct us in terms of leading. That's not what it is to love your spouse like Christ loves the church. So we need to kind of understand some of those thoughts as foundational. Another piece that we want to consider and look at is the reality that God has given our spouse to us as a partner in life. And he's done so on purpose. What they bring to the table has real value. And in fact, I've come to the belief and conviction that there are things that I need to know in terms of leading our family that the Lord is not going to speak to me directly. That I'm over here and I'm saying, Lord, what do we do with this, and where do we go, and how do we navigate this situation and this challenge and whatnot? And I got nothing. I'm like, Lord, where are you at in that? Because he's speaking the answer to my spouse's heart. And he does that, he told me, because I'm inclined not to listen to her. And that if he spoke directly to me and direct those things direct to me, my natural bent and inclination is to not listen to her. And that's not what he wants for us. And so there are times at which I just know that the Lord is going to speak through Cassie into the things that we're trying to figure out together. And that if I disregard kind of what she's bringing to the table, I do so to my own detriment and to the detriment of our family, because it's really what the Lord has for us. And I'm not going to get there any other way, because he wants me to move forward in unity with my wife. He wants me to be on page with her and to value and respect the talents and the giftings and the wisdom that he's given her, and her ability to attune to the Holy Spirit and bring into the dialogue things that the Lord really has for the two of us. And so there's that kind of component to things. One other piece that I'll throw out to you, that is, it's going to be hard. It just is. That part of the design of marriage is to challenge our sinfulness and our brokenness and our immaturity, and to call us upward into Christ likeness. And so if you find it a struggle, rather to lead or to follow or to engage a humble dialogue with each other kind of around the direction that the Lord has for your family, it's hard because it's hard for all of us. We're sinful, broken creatures, and we struggle to show up maturely. And all our own hurts and wounds and baggage and fears and past experiences that have been destructive in our life all come together in a big bleh in our marriage, which people don't always tell you in premarital counseling, but it's just a reality of all marriage. Is actually, I think, part of the design of it is to help bring about that maturity through the struggle of marriage. So take heart. You're asking the right questions. You're inviting the Lord into the process. And when we ask the Lord to help us do the very thing that he wants us to do, we can count on his help in that process. And that those prayers are effective because we're asking him for what he already wants to do.
Yeah, so much sanctification I'm learning comes from my relationship with my spouse. So much sanctification. They see the best and worst parts of us, and it's a gift. It is. It is such a gift.
It's a gift I haven't always appreciated as
Absolutely.
much as the Lord would want me to.
Right, right. Yeah.
My marriage, I was like, "What are you doing to me, Lord? This woman driving me crazy."
Absolutely.
I've
I've
come to
been there.
realize that, man, it's been such a blessing in helping me grow up and mature.
Yeah, amen, amen. So, on to the next question. My husband just lost his job. How can I support him right now?
Oh man, yeah, gosh, that's hard. That our work as men is a significant part of our identity for most men. Sometimes it's too much of our identity, but it's an important part of who we are, and that's not a broken thing. That's really part of design. You go back to Genesis. God made Adam, and then he put him in a garden and put him to work. That was pre-curse. That was before the fall of man. That's how things get started. God makes earth, God makes Adam, God puts Adam in a garden and gives him some work to do. It's part of our being. God works, right? God works 6 days, and the seventh day he rested, right? That God works, it's part of who God is. And so it's a reflection in us as part of who we are. And so for that piece of our identity and the work that we're doing to be gone is a real blow. It's a real, impacts us in a significant way. And it's part of whether our sense of value brings structure to our life. It brings a sense of how I contribute to my family, how I support, how I provide. It's how I put my giftings and talents to use and receive affirmation and appreciation for those giftings and talents, part of who I am. And so there's tremendous loss beyond just the financial loss when you lose your job or when a man loses his job. So I appreciate your, as a wife, kind of recognizing that and going, man, how do I support him in the midst of this? Because sometimes it can just be focused around the money piece of it, right? We're thinking about, okay, it's discouraging, but it's okay. We've got savings, or we've got friends, or we can tighten in the belt, or I can pick up some other work. And, and we just kind of come at it thinking about the financial loss piece of it, which is really probably actually the smaller piece of it. It matters, it's significant to our family. But in terms of the overall impact to your husband, is probably a smaller piece of it. So, what our heart longs to know in the midst of that is that we still have value, and that we're still accepted, and that we are respectable, and that there's a belief kind of in us, that we want to be the chief cheer on of our spouse, whether that's a husband or wife, that there's that sense that I'm in your corner, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to do this. And circumstances are what they are, but we can trust that the Lord is going to be our supply, and that he's going to create opportunity, and you're going to be able to engage the giftings and skills that God has given you to the opportunity that he provides. And that this interim process, God has purpose in that too. And he has purpose in growing our faith as we learn to rely on him as our supply. That his purpose in us in humility, and kind of maybe recognizing maybe pride that's a part of our life, and being kind of humbled through the struggle of it allows us to grow in our humility. Whatever it is for you, the Holy Spirit doesn't waste opportunities like this. And if we align ourselves with his purposes, that is, if we say, listen, I don't want to be kicking against the goads. I don't want to be resisting what it is that you're wanting to do in my life, but I want to work in concert with you, Father. And I want to be soft and moldable, and allow you to expose the things I'm needing to mature in, and confront the things that need to be dealt with, so that I can get out of this season the things that you're wanting me to get out of this season. It would be terrible is for you to lose a job and go through all this struggle, and because of hard-heartedness and hard-headedness, to not get anything out of it. Like, that would be a real tragedy. That struggle and failure and loss and that all can become things that actually springboard us into greater prosperity in our life if we allow them to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's such great advice. Josh, I would just love if you could encourage the people watching, either watching live right now or watching the replay, with just something to encourage them in their marriage in this season. There's a lot of things happening, a lot of grief and loss of really special moments, special trips that were planned, and just things coming up inside that haven't been addressed before, but now, you're with each other so much. So Josh, could you just give some words of encouragement to people watching who are wrestling with such a variety of things right now in the midst of COVID?
Totally. When we're going through struggles like this, one of the chief things that we need to be focused on growing is in grace. Really, grace with ourselves and grace with our spouse. And we're all kind of facing things that stretch us outside of our norm, and things that intensify the struggles that we already had. And it lends itself to none of us showing up at our best. So we need to have a grace with ourselves. And we need to have a grace with ourselves. I like grace grease. Without grace grease, the friction builds up and things burst into flames. Right? Grace grease goes a long way to helping us be able to navigate the struggle. Another piece is to have a framework for stepping outside of the crises to give some meaning and purpose to it. Right? That there's an incredible value when we can give the meaning to the struggles of our life. And if we can do that intentionally, we can step back and go, I believe what the scriptures say are true, and that God is at work through the struggles of life, in order to bring about my good. And that even in this current season of crises, even in this current season of struggle and difficulty, that God is at work through this as well to bring about my good. And I want to lean into that. And I want to lean into that by being intentional about trying to understand maybe the areas that he's wanting to work on me in. Not just to say that as like a gloss over. It's like, well, God is good and he's at work to be good. And even though this sucks and I hate it, I'm sure God is going to do something good out of it. Right? That's just kind of a gloss over it. But I need to really lean into that and go, Father, what are you up to? What are you wanting to do in me? What are you wanting to do in my marriage during this season? How are you using the pressures and the stressors of this to shine a light on the areas where we need to mature and grow, where I need to mature and grow? It's easy for us to be painfully aware of the areas of immaturity that we see in our spouse and the ways that they need to grow. But how do we hold up the mirror and allow ourselves to see what's in our yard? And what are the things that I need to grow in during this season? And inviting the Holy Spirit to do that work in our life during this time so that we can emerge from this season truly in a better place than we came into it. Truly closer to each other, more mature than we came into it, stronger than we were before, and able to share a closeness and an intimacy that allows us, instead of being driven apart, that we're pressed together in a way that enables us to stand up against the challenges that life throws at us. And it's totally possible for you to come out of this feeling stronger than ever before and feel like, man, if we can get through that, we can face anything. And to have the tools and the know-how to navigate life's challenges in a way that is powerful and models that for your kids, models that for your community, and really puts God's grace on display by way of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the super profound things that you said in this that I loved was that with the many struggles comes many opportunities to grow, to be sanctified, to sanctify each other, and learn each other and learn to love each other in the way that God intends. So super great. Would love to know if y'all have any more questions. Go ahead and comment now. If y'all have any questions for Josh Spurlock, who is graciously giving up his time today to just jump on here and chat with us, give us encouragement and wisdom. Yeah, Josh, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm excited for everyone who's watching live and everyone who's going to watch the replay of this and be encouraged.
Yeah, this has been really fun. I think we're going to do some more of these as the weeks go by. I think we're maybe planning and scheduled for next Wednesday to do another My Counselor Live. And it's a good opportunity for folks to get some question in, maybe some things that they've thought, man, I'd really like to ask a professional counselor about this or about that, and just hear their take on it. It's a venue and opportunity for you to do that and get some interaction and really maybe even hear from some others, their questions that maybe you haven't even thought of, and be able to get some perspective into your situation that otherwise wouldn't have been on your radar.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we will have all of that information up shortly on how you can tune in next week to My Counselor Live. And as always, you can always ask us questions, inbox us, or you can go to MyCounselor.Online/ask and just ask for a friend. Do that form, and you guys can hit up our YouTube channel and see the many questions that we've answered on there on asking for a friend. We really
Totally.
love
And
engaging with y'all.
yeah, and if you're watching this and you're like, I can't make that time slot to engage the live, you can definitely use the asking for a friend form on the website or inbox us and then we'll answer the question during the time together, and you can watch the video at a later point in time. And so don't feel like if you're not able to be available during the time slot that we have it scheduled that you're left out in terms of being able to have your question answered. So send it in, we'll answer it, and then you can catch the video later.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Josh, thank you so much for joining us and just your transparency, honesty, and encouragement to a world that really needs it right now.
Hey, I love it. I'm thankful to get to do this and to just be what the King has given me as a task. So I'm glad to do it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to My Counselor Live here with My Counselor Online and Josh Spurlock. I'm Tori, and we will see you guys next week for another live session here on Facebook.